on the inflation side of things, right? I mean, that's what's different this time around for the central banks, right? Is they're much more limited in what they can do because their primary goal right now is to get inflation under control, and it's proving stubborn, right? 6% last official CPI. Do you expect that to be brought under control? Because everything you're talking about here is contractionary from an economic standpoint. So do you sort of expect inflation to kind of resolve itself as we go through this process into recession and then a big capitulation? Or do you have a different outlook?
Well, inflation is starting to come down, and that would be expected. Part of its base effect. Part of it was energy prices coming down a lot. Other copper, those kinds of things, you don't need as much. Housing is lumber prices. So we've seen a lot of the commodities decline in price. All that's to be expected. But you have other issues that are pushing up inflation. You have a wage price thing going on here where we don't have enough workers. The JOLTS report still shows 10.5 million job openings, and we have 1.9 more job openings than we have workers, available workers, unemployed. We have wage pressure. I don't know if you saw, but Delta had a wage contract negotiation, 34% increase. And Americans said they'd match it, and then American pilots still going on strike, supposedly, because that's not enough. You had increases. Labor had been left behind for a long time, but now they're more in the driver's seat. And with the shortages of people, we have shortages of accountants, we have shortages of healthcare people. In New Hampshire, the hospitals all got together and said, Warren, we don't have enough people at all levels. And so expect long waits now to get healthcare. Retail, you go on and on and on. Labor has an advantage right now, and we're seeing it in higher wages. So, and that leads, when you have higher wages, corporations have to increase their prices, and some of them weren't able to get all the price increases they needed last year, so they're still raising prices. So you've unleashed that, and that's kind of structural. We've lost a lot of workers, retirees, baby boomers like myself have retired. You've lost them to, some cases that there's disincentives for some people to work. The COVID was a problem. Daycare is a problem. For all these reasons, we don't have workers, and then we're also globalization reversing. We had all the positive effects from globalization, which reduced prices, and now we're going to try to reshore. And when you do that, it's higher costs. So the positive things that have kept inflation in check for all those decades, really, a lot of those key drivers are now reversing. So I think you'll see a decline in inflation. And what you might see is what we saw in the 1970s, which was up and down, and then always a little bit higher. If the Fed doesn't, if Powell doesn't pivot, and
if he does, I assume you say that we'll see substantially higher inflation result from that?
I think we could see substantially higher inflation because of the way we've created incredible amounts of money supply growth during the COVID period. 40% growth in 2 years. Some of that money still floating around. If we put more in, if we continue to do that, then I think we will, because we don't have the benefit of globalization keeping prices down. We don't have the amount of labor that we once had, so these pressures are going to be. It's sort of like 70s stuff. And then I also think energy prices are going to reverse and rally again. I was in energy stocks I reduced them this year or last year. I reduced them. It was a good move. But I had a substantial energy position for a couple of years because I know ultimately we're going to have shortages again. ConocoPhillips CEO said we're going back to the 1970s and 80s. Pioneer Natural said that we'll never see the production levels that we've reached before, which is like 13 million barrels a day. And that's because of ESG, because of the Biden administration's disdain for the group. The Permian wells are seeing great production declines right now. we brought down the strategic petroleum reserve from 650 million barrels to 370 million barrels, and that helped take the price down, but that was a one-time shot. And, we've seen demand destruction, and that's also helped, and the weather helped, especially in Europe. But longer term, these pressures, these energy prices, I think are going higher again, and that will reverse the benefits that we've seen to inflation here recently.
Intuiting from everything you've said so far, Fred, I get the impression that you think that we could easily have back-to-back disappointing years in the markets, right? A lot of people like to point to, oh, well, when a market's down by 20% one year, history says that the likelihood of us having a positive year the next year is X percent or whatever.
Right. Sure.
But I think you're skeptical of that, saying, given the realities on the ground, there's not a great argument to get real, long the market here.
No, as I said, the valuations are terrible, and we're heading toward a recession. And as you pointed out, we're not quite there yet. There are a lot of mixed signals, but the things are turning down. And I've never, all the bear markets I've seen, they all, on average, they take a couple of years anyways. And so that argument, you don't have 2 years in a row, that's craziness. Especially with the valuations that you have here, they're just not going to be sustained. I expect, what I'm thinking is we'll have a really bad September and October, because that's when it always seems to hit the fan. And then we'll have a build up to that. I think that the bear market rally that we had ended, and we're now in another downturn. We could have another rally after that, but some point, September, October, it's things will really have deteriorated. And like you said, you start to see big job numbers, 600, 700,000 layoffs and those kind of things. You could start to see that. But this also could extend even into 2024, potentially. It's so big, the excesses that have to be corrected. And it's hard to know for sure, but I'm pretty certain that 2023 is going to be a bad year.